Typically, people are running push-pull legs, or it could be even pull-push legs. And it's just a way to organize your training volume. That's all it is. I've had a lot of people ask me, like, are you doing the push-pull legs like it's this whole specific program? And it's not. So your training frequency is just purely based off what you need stimulus-wise in a session and how much you need recovery-wise. So for someone like earlier on, if you just started training, you're a beginner, in a session, you grow off very minimal. You grow off a couple sets, and it's a robust stimulus. And since you're not as strong yet, you won't need as much recovery. Definitely won't need as much recovery time. So within a couple days, you're like, yeah, I already feel great again. I could go do that again. And so you go train again. So off someone who's a beginner, it wouldn't make sense yet to do like a push-pull leg split or even a body part split, hitting a muscle group once a day, because you just don't need that much volume in one session yet. So a lot of beginners, like for what I recommend, is usually full body routines. So you can get stimulus on every single body part and come back and train. And think about it, if you're able to stimulate muscle growth every other day or every 3 days, like you'll grow really fast. But then at some point, you're going to need more volume in a session. And if you kept doing this full body workout, well, gosh, eventually your workout might be 3 hours long, right? And so that isn't time efficient. So now you have to go to a more split routine. That might be upper, lower, upper, lower. Then at some point, same thing happens. Like your upper body day gets so extensive, and you might start feeling just spent. Like, gosh, I get through training chest and shoulders, and I get to back, and I just have nothing left, and it's like hour 2 of my workout. Then it makes sense. Well, you know what? I'm going to need more stimulus in a session. It's more fatiguing, so now I need more recovery time. And so this is like when you finally get to like that push-pull legs type split, and that's where I'm at. So that's why I have this routine that I do to organize my training volume so I can get enough stimulus in a session, but I also have enough days to recover. So right now I have my push day, a pull day, I'll have an off day, legs, then off day. And so every time I'm hitting the same muscle group with every 5 days. And that gives me the frequency to where I'm recovering. So I come into a training session and I can train hard, I can progress my lifts, strength is increasing, and I'm not coming into a session feeling like overly fatigued, or I'm not getting pumps anymore, I'm still sore, and my lifts are declining. So that is why like I have the setup that I do. We're going to get into this actual push day. So if you are at a setup to where you need that volume in a push session, and you're going to train chest, shoulder, tris, let's get into it. So today, for my session, I have it structured to where I have a little bit more shoulder emphasis. So first exercise for the day, I'm doing a shoulder wide lateral raise. And this will be my side delt movement. And I start with the side delt movement. For one, I want to start with the thing that I want to bring up the most. And also, I don't want something that's going to make a lot of fatigue from my other movements and take away from it. And side delts in your like horizontal pressing, your tricep work, it's not really going to have a big impact. So I can do something where I'm really fresh, get a great stimulus for growth, then move into my compound moves from there. So a side delt first on a push day for what I need makes a lot of sense. This Y lateral raise, I like the movement because it takes me through a very large range of motion for the delt. And also when I'm looking at movements and picking exercises, I want to make sure that I have good alignment with where the resistance is and also how the joints line up, and then looking at the muscle structure itself. So I can kind of move in this Y pattern, which if you were to look at the side delt, it lines up really well with it. Also, you're not taxing on the wrist, so I use ankle cuffs on my wrist so I can completely take my wrist out of it. And I don't feel like the binding in my elbow like I do sometimes in like a lateral. And then the problem with the dumbbell lateral too is you come up and you kind of only get some resistance at the very top. And then you come down to the bottom of the lateral raise and there's really not much resistance there at all. With using a cable, you can really adjust where you want the resistance, and with this lying Y lateral raise, you get a good mid-range resistance. So the muscle is really good at producing force there. When the muscle gets really weak in the shortened phase at the very top, it's kind of letting off some tension. So it's a great setup. So I'll do 3 sets here in this side wide lateral raise. And usually I'm sticking between like 12 to 20 reps. So my first set, I might hit like 18 reps or so. Then I'll stay with the same weight and my reps will just drop down because I'm fatigued. I stay with a higher rep range on laterals because going really heavy, it's hard to feel it in a lateral. Tend to see a lot of tricep take over, and then going even higher rep range, it's just not as effective reps. So keeping the reps within that range, like anything below 10, I haven't really felt like it's that effective for delt training. So moving from my side lateral movements is then I will get into my pressing movements. And so my different push movements I do is I'll pick a shoulder press movement, a chest press, and a tricep press. And depending on what I need is how I'll organize those moves. And the exercises I'm picking are just purely based off of what I get a great connection with that gives me a good pump in the target muscle, and that's within my movement capability. So what I've always tried to do is overhead press, like direct 90-degree shoulder press right overhead. And what always happens within a few weeks, my rotator cuffs feel terrible. I can't even keep doing it. It's just not sustainable. My true like mobility and where I can work is kind of like a steep incline press. So my overhead press is more of an incline bench press, and shoulders is my focus. So I start with an incline hammer strength press. So this is kind of my up front delt upper pec press that I do first. And I work up here, and what I'm trying to get to is a top set, and I'll do 2 sets. First set being, my goal is 6 to 10. And then I'll do a back off set of 10 to 15 reps. Now that doesn't always happen in that order. And I'll tell you guys the rep range is far less important within reason, because hypertrophy is a very forgiving adaptation. You can get good growth from really 6 to almost 20 reps is a good reasonable range. You could go a little higher, you could go a little lower, but in general, like between these numbers. So the idea is just so you're doing hard sets that push you and you really take it at near failure, and the rep range isn't as important. So I go off of just how I feel for the day a lot of times. So if I feel like joints don't feel that great, it's have a hard time working up, I might do a high rep set first, then I'll go heavier and do another hard set and my reps drop. Or sometimes I just blow my last set out of the water, which happened this time. So my incline press, I went to 4 plates and a quarter. That was a 30-pound jump, and I hit another 2 reps. I did 11 reps on this one, which is kind of getting towards what my normal back off set rep range was. So what I did was like, oh man, I feel great. So I went up to 5 plates, and my second set I went lower in reps, and I think I got 6 reps on that one. It was 6 or 7. But anyway, that was the order I went in, and if you feel good, I say you go for it, and moving up in that higher load, there's a good argument for increasing strength. You could say that, hypertrophy is just part of the adaptation of strength, and a lot of the other strength gains are more neurological and learning the movement pattern. But getting stronger in a variety of rep ranges, it can make you more stable and able to produce more force in controlled manner in your other rep ranges. So using a variety of rep ranges, I think, just makes sense. You would want to get strong across all varieties, rep ranges, and I think it can help drive up your other sets, your higher rep sets. So moving on from there, I'll do my flat press movement. And this one is a plate-loaded flat chest press. And it starts from a dead stop, and I like it because of the dead stop. So it gives me a very standardized way that I always know what my depth and range of motion is. So it's very consistent across sessions for if I know if I'm really progressing or not. Only difficulty with it is that you do start in the bottom position, and there's not a very much of a horizontal abduction component to it, so the grip width just kind of stays constant. So it's limiting, but for flat chest pressing, that's one of the better ones we have in our gym, and I feel it, so that's what really matters. And same thing on this one. I work up to like a hard set, 6 to 10 reps, then I drop back and wait for 10 to 15 reps. Next, I go to my tricep movement. So you see this order is like kind of a shoulder press, my shoulder press, high incline, a chest press, now a tricep press. And I do a Smith machine close grip bench press with just a slight incline up because I can get a little bit more range of motion on my triceps. And as far as hand positioning, I try to keep my wrist directly above my elbow. So once you go too far in, it starts binding your wrist, and then you're starting to get limited by your joint and mechanics, and if you're beating up your wrist or your elbows doing these things, it's not sustainable. So it's part of this thing about being sustainable and consistent with your exercise choice that you're picking. Also, I pick a tricep press because it has some carryover also to my chest and shoulder pressing. So if you wanted some more direct tricep work, maybe this, or maybe if you need more like shoulders, say you had a weak shoulders, but you need to do some tricep work. Maybe you could do a really steep incline close grip press. That way it works more shoulder, you get some tricep involved as well. We start here and do a set of 6 to 10. I'll back off and wait and do a set of 10 to 15 reps for that one. So that built in my compound work for the workout. And for volume, like I count any muscle groups that works, I count sets towards those. So like I'm doing 3 presses, I count that as 6 sets of chest work for me. Same with delts, like front delts, that would be 6 sets of front delt work and 6 sets of triceps. Now each of those movements will put emphasis more than others, so it's just kind of a consideration. All right, so next we'll go to isolation movements and start working a little bit higher rep ranges. I'll go to a standing cable fly. And I like braced stable movements, but I do use this standing cable fly because it allows my scapula to have some protraction. And what I've learned through going through rehab and prehab, just because of shoulder issues, is that my serratus is relatively weak. And my other muscle groups have to compensate. So with the standing cable fly, I have to go through that protraction of the scapula at the very end. So it's a good movement for me to build some strength within weaknesses that I have from a movement and stability standpoint. So this one I'm doing 2 sets here, and we'll hit like that 12 to 20 rep range on my cable fly. Then the last movement I'm going to go to will be my tricep isolation movement. And this one's been a bit different because, with picking movements, it's trying to find stuff that, the joints align well, the tensions aligns with those joints. I can get in a stable brace position, and I can feel the active muscle working. So with a cable, I have a lot of freedom, especially doing single arm to where I'm not bound in a position. That's been an issue that I always experience, and maybe you've experienced them too, like doing like an easy bar or a rope push down. Like a rope push down, you're internally rotated, and the end of the press, it's very awkward, and you can't spread the rope anymore. Ideally, you want something where the shoulder wrists in line, you're all at shoulder width, and can actually get into a good neutral position. But what I wanted here was something to bring the elbow up and do a tricep work to hit more the long head, medial head of the tricep, but limit elbow pain. So if I bring my arm up, for me, a good working spot is really about within this range, where my elbow is about right at shoulder height. Anything above that, I'm having to really bind my shoulder to get in the right position. I can force it with weight, but that's not what I want to do, because that usually what takes me down a path of just overuse and injuries. So doing overhead press, usually with a cable, it's like, man, my head's kind of in the way of where I really need to work. So I can kind of get around this by using like a cross-body cable tricep extension. And it is kind of an awkward setup, but it's smooth as butter for my elbow. And I can use my wrist cuffs again, take the hand out of it so the wrist isn't bound, and can go through a tricep extension that way. And then I use a 90-degree like military press bench so I can help with stabilizing the scapulas and torso, and just take some of the other the muscle groups that might be trying to move, and if I get more stable, I'll be more consistent in my loading patterns week to week. So on this one, I'll do 3 sets, and for tricep work, you're doing your heavy pressing, so I don't think you need to be doing like less than 10 reps on your tricep work. You could probably do 8 reps, but I'll still work like within 10 to 20 reps for my tricep work. Usually starting on the higher end, and then I'll stay with the same weight, and the reps will just drop from fatigue from there. So that wraps up my push day, guys. That's how I set mine up. And like I said, just a push day is just a way to organize your stimulus for what you need. So you have to train within your needs and what your capabilities are. So these exercises that I'm picking might not be the right ones for you. And the order that I'm putting them in might not be right for you too. So it really comes down to making sure you're able to individualize your training for yourself, decide what you need, and build that training frequency, the right workouts for you, and the right exercises and order of those workouts. So, hope you enjoyed, guys, watching my push day and had some good takeaways. If you had any questions about just training in general or stuff you'd like to see, or questions about today, please leave them below. Talk to y'all next time.
BP Muscle ตัวแทนนำเข้าและจัดจำหน่ายผลิตภัณฑ์อาหารเสริมแบรนด์ Animal และ Universal รวมไปถึงอุปกรณ์ฟิตเนสแบรนด์ Grizzly อย่างเป็นทางการแต่เพียงผู้เดียว